I had another video planned today, but I started watching Wallace's video about a YouTuber running a cult, in which specifically that DMT was mentioned as being this like cure-all substance. And the whole time I was thinking to myself, as messed up as this is, why doesn't it feel like the first time I'm hearing this story? And that's because it wasn't the first time I've heard this story. Be sure to like my video if you enjoy watching it, and be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss an upload. Anyway, roll my intro. Chapter 1. What is a cult? I feel like before we tackle both of these stories completely, it's important to understand the idea of what a cult is. Mostly because I feel like cult is one of those words that everyone kind of knows what it means, but no one knows the definition for. Like entrepreneur. Because for some reason people that run pyramid schemes think that they're entrepreneurs. Like, no. It makes you a scammer. I'll take my hatred out on scammers another day. But if you open up a dictionary, the word cult is defined as being a religion that is simply considered to be unorthodox, or a great devotion to a person, an idea, or a thing. So what's the actual difference between, say, a cult and Scientology? Because it's one of those things where the line can easily be blurred. Mike Bickle, yes, the Mike Bickle that founded IHOP, created a list of traits that are commonly accepted today for defining characteristics of a cult. And if you would have told me the guy that made the International House of Pancakes was able to define a cult, I wouldn't have believed you. He says the traits of a cult are as follows. So as I explain the stories that go on, be sure to look out for these 7 key elements. So as weird as Scientology is, it doesn't really check off all those boxes. But do you know what does check off all those boxes? Chapter 2. Cantelmoism. If you're into internet rabbit holes, this probably isn't going to be new to you. But like all good stories, let's start at the beginning. But starting at the beginning is kind of hard in this situation because the official Cantelmoism subreddit was deleted by Reddit. Also, all of the accounts that the cult leader made were also deleted by Reddit. This is what some pretty good moderation looks like. You should probably take some notes. TikTok. I didn't forget. Cantelmoism starts with a guy named Chris Cantelmo. We're just gonna call him Chris, or as he was known on Reddit as Chris CGC. Chris quickly grew a reputation on Reddit as being Mr. Moneybags, as he's given away over 70k in Reddit gifts, but specifically he gave those Reddit gifts in r/teenagers and r/dank memes, which in Reddit speak are just 2 fancy ways to say I'm not legal. As he continued to give out these Reddit badges amongst other people in the communities, people started to wonder, who are you and how are you doing this? So of course, when given the opportunity, people interviewing him would ask these questions, to which it was revealed that Chris was the president of GL Sciences, and he was giving out the money to spread the word that DMT cures cancer, and that chemotherapy and radiation were actually killing cancer patients. I don't know about you, but that seems like the least efficient way to spread fake news. DMT has definitely been studied and used in cancer research, but no real effects have been found. And speaking negatively about cancer treatments that have been proven to work is psychotic at best. And the fact that he was able to make such a large claim and actually get people to kind of listen might garner you the question of what is DMT and why does he believe it can cure cancer? So let's pause talking about Chris for a second and let's talk about DMT. Chapter 3. What is DMT? So I want to start with a disclaimer because I don't want you to watch this video and somehow misinterpret the message of this video. I'm not glorifying DMT. I'm just telling you what it does, what it do. And to make sure that point is hammered down, I'm going to read some of the side effects. Keyword, some. So there's more side effects out there. These are just some of them. You got seizures, loss of coordination, confusion, coma, respiratory arrest, psychosis, hallucinogen persisting perception disorder, serotonin syndrome warning, anxiety, tremors, and muscle rigidity. Again, that's just some of the laundry list of problems you can experience if you consume, ingest, snort DMT, whatever your preference of using it is. So Don't try it at home. But let's talk about it. DMT, dimethyltryptamine, is the active ingredient that is found in ayahuasca. You might be asking me, Will, what is ayahuasca? I'll tell you. It is the drug that has existed in South America for thousands of years. It's been a major key part in their culture, and it's a part of cultures in a lot of different areas, and not necessarily just South America. But DMT in the Americas, DMT and the mainstream world today has been used in its raw form, primarily smoked, and it is probably the most powerful psychedelic to exist. I don't know that. I can't prove that, but it's just off of the accounts of people that I've like watched, read, listened to, leaning towards that as being the answer. And it's been known to convert atheists into being believers, which is how strong of a spiritual experience that it offers people. I'm turning my notes over. And a lot of the things that I'm reporting are based off of just numerous of trip reports that I've listened to, just numerous research papers that I've read, and a lot of different little pieces of story that I've pieced together. And I might sound crazy explaining it, but I'm going to try my best to explain what it does to you so I can articulate the point I'm trying to make in this video. DMT is a substance that's known to take you out of the physical world, and when people talk about DMT, they talk about it being a place. They don't say it's in their mind, and there's beings, celestial beings, that are made out of light as well, that are telepathically speaking to you. They're guiding you along this journey with all the lights, with all the fractals, with all the images, telling you these things telepathically, and then you wake up 15 minutes later when your trip is over. You are supposed to interpret the experience as to what you learned and what you think your mind was trying to tell you. You might walk away, maybe be a little less selfish. You might walk away and now you're a little less mean to people. But then there are people like Chris and there are people like Leo who have some drastic changes to who they possibly are based off the messages that they receive. Having not done it, trying to explain what it can do is kind of hard, and like trying to explain what it is kind of difficult. So I think it's best if we watch a video of an artist who paints while on DMT. He literally paints and tries to paint the DMT experience, and I feel like that's the perfect video to watch.
The average Joe that smokes DMT occasionally and paints. Well, they really do a good job. For me, I feel like when I'm tripping, little guy is doing over there, but I don't really know how to describe the little guys.
These guys right here. these little aliens guys opening a door. What's good with them? I like this color. Is this a light being hitting a bong? Is that where we got bongs from? Some dude was just tripping on DMT and he saw the alien smoking out of a bong and he was like, I should bring that back here. I don't know. So just a thought.
The background there out the window is just like, for sure.
And that's something you saw?
If you simplified what I saw down to like...
But that's going back to the whole light thing that I was talking about, the beings being made out of light. So you see there's just a bunch of different little smiley faces. If you simplify what he probably saw, that might be what you get.
One symbol that I imagine, I get a lot of positive feedback on Instagram. These...
The way he just stopped laughing. That's so socially awkward. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being socially awkward. Heck, we're all a little socially awkward. It's fine.
All they're just like notes from smoking DMT, basically.
Oh, he does a lot of DMT if those are all his notes.
Sure. Yeah, this guy. So, like, you know, you end up in this place. The
point I tried to make earlier is you say, it's a place. hence him saying place.
You can kind of like move through it. You look down like a hallway, and there'll be like millions of other hallways to look at. The walls are like pink, but they're not pink. They're all the colors that you can think of kind of changing. There'll be like canals filled with water. And the water, you look at it, and it's just, but it's like, it doesn't look really like this. Like, it kind of, like, I see it, I'm like, well, this is the best I can do.
What is that? I mean, I get it's him trying to paint the DMT experience. There's too many things coming at you, but I know some kindergartners that would kill the game. I'm just saying, but I can kind of see what's going on, because I have from my readings of people saying that you feel the radiation of happiness and love. You see some hearts going on in there, lots of smiley faces, and the pictures constantly change when you start to recognize what's going on. So like, I can kind of get how you get here, and that's where we end the Crash Course DMT journey. He ends out explaining how to make DMT, and I'm just not going to include that in this video. Chapter 4. The End of Cantelmoism. So, towards the peak of Cantelmoism, Chris had a podcast that a lot of people actually did listen to. And through the podcast, people discovered that Chris may or may not have cured his brain cancer with DMT. And throughout his podcast, it was regular that he would portray himself as having a superior moral compass than a lot of people that were around him. He would broadcast his accomplishments, such as allowing homeless people to shower in his house whenever they wanted to. And a lot of people started to worship him almost as if he was a god, and you couldn't really differentiate whether a lot of people were genuinely believing these things or they were just listening to him because he was giving out gifts as if they were postcards. There was even one of his followers that reported that they received $15,000 in tuition from Chris. So I'm not gonna lie, maybe I considered joining. The only negative aspect of this that I could actually find was when you tried to leave the community or spoke negatively about the community, your inbox would be flooded with death threats. But when Chris started to run out of money and Reddit stopped getting paid as much money from Chris because of the fact that he wasn't buying these Reddit gifts for people, and he decided to offer to his following that he would buy flights for his devoted followers, r/teenagers and r/dank memes, which in Reddit speak are just two fancy ways to say I'm not legal, to come visit him to experience DMT as an anti-cancer treatment, is where they drew the line and he got banned. So with no Reddit, Chris then spread his teachings on YouTube and also his website. I zoomed through the history of Cantelmoism because what's more important is how DMT really affected his teachings and what he said DMT has told him to pass on to other people. But before I get to talking about his teachings, I first want to tie in another delusional human being. So bear with me and try your best not to get lost. Chapter 5. Leo Gura. I feel like D'Angelo did a great job covering the cliff notes of this situation, but I think to really discuss this and have a high-level conversation about this, you gotta dig deeper. Clearly, you could probably tell that by the length of this video, but I feel like all the information I said in the past is needed to get the understanding of the point I'm trying to make. So, now that we're finally on the same page, let's talk about Leo. The great thing about Leo Gura, well, I mean, as great as starting a cult on YouTube could be, but because he started on YouTube, you can see the journey from start to finish. The journey starts 5 years ago. Surprisingly, Leo wasn't always the cult leader in training that he is today. He started with teaching men how to be womanizers. Yeah, the man who looks like he has never touched a girl over the age of 16 is teaching men how to talk to women. Well, I guess those who can't do, teach. His content really was centered around self-help, and he read a lot of books. I'm not going to deny that, so a lot of his teachings were very much rooted in the teachings of other people who had enough knowledge to write a book at least. Look at this picture of him next to all his books. He looks so happy, right? And he built a large amount of his 900,000 subscribers off of this content, which is great content. In fact, a lot of the videos on his website are from this era of content, from his 5-year mark to about 3 years ago. And he continues to sell these teachings on actualize.org, which I think is weird that people buy his course considering his whole course is more or less on his YouTube for free. And he apparently reported that some people pay upwards of $2,000 to for a course that only costs $250. They go crazy with that gratuity bug. I'm not hating, but he was successful. And a lot of his followers didn't question him. They trusted him. And from what I was looking at in terms of his videos, there was no mention of him being God. There was no mention of him having these delusional thoughts, these delusional messages, or him preaching things that weren't really fake. It was very much straightforward. Like, these are things that you can read in books. They were self-help and they were actually pretty solid advice. And obviously, of course, there was a turning point.
This is God talking. Listen up.
Then he discovered psychedelics. 2016, he posted a video called... I'm actually not even gonna say it, I'm gonna put it on the screen. I can't even bring myself to saying those words. He discovers 5-MeO-DMT, which is similar to the DMT that we discussed earlier, but you're guaranteed ego dissolution, or what people call ego death. So, if DMT is vodka, 5-MeO-DMT is Everclear. It's a completely unnecessary step forward. And you can tell that this and all the other psychedelic substances have really affected the type of content that he was creating. Without even watching the videos, you can scroll through and immediately tell when psychedelics entered the picture. There are two main changes that really occurred, but two things pop out of you really quickly. One, the video lengths almost tripled. They went from the standard 10 to 20 minutes to an hour, 2 hours. And then he slowly started to integrate trippy visuals as thumbnails for his videos. But then if you dig deeper and you look at what he's talking about, the titles of the videos, and how he presents the information, you can tell that he's starting to integrate a lot of cult psychology into his videos. And you're like, Will, how do you know? Well, I'm an expert, considering I watched his 2-part series on cult psychology. And at the end of part 1, he goes ahead and says, listen.
Like to watch myself such that I don't become a cult leader. You know, if I wanted to, I could easily turn actualize.org into a cult. I could create a whole pyramid structure with myself at the top.
That will never happen. Which means a lot coming from the man that looks like he's already a cult leader. But he is also already a cult leader. But if you sort his videos from old to new and you scroll and you start to watch them, you can see a man slowly transition to the delusional man that he is today. One that doesn't believe in science, one that thinks he's smarter than Einstein, and see a man with a normal sense of self-worth transform into a man that believes that he is truly God. And when confronted by other people about the claims that he makes, or even the teachings that he's spreading to the masses, he either responds with, why don't you do DMT? Or his followers, without being asked to do this, will attack that person into submission. I think based off of the progression of Leo, it's easy to come to two conclusions. One, this is a man with a legitimate 5-year plan who wanted to start off building some social proof and portraying himself as you and I, and slowly transition into a man who is starting a cult centered around DMT. Or this is a man who started a legitimate online platform, and this can be shown by the fact that he does have some legitimate teachings and took DMT and cracked under his psychedelic experiences, did not properly interpret his trip, and continue to spread this false information to the masses. From watching this video, you can probably see that I lean towards one way, and that's partially because of the fact that Chris Cantelmo, and that's the reason that we talked about him today, who also tried to form a cult around DMT, had a lot of the similar beliefs based off of his experiences with DMT. And I assure you, if you ask the Leo of the past if he's held any of these beliefs, I'm gonna go ahead and say no. It wasn't until he was awakened by 5-MeO-DMT that he felt the way that he feels today. So, it's a lot for me to break down his teachings through his videos, but what I will do and what I want to do is go through the beliefs of Chris Cantelmo, and I will point out the beliefs that Leo also has. So let's turn around. Conclusion, the teachings. Okay, so we're on Chris Cantelmo's website to go over his teachings, and again, I just want to briefly talk about the idea that Chris and Leo's beliefs are very similar, and I'm only going to talk about the ones of Chris that I've heard Leo say in one of the videos that I've watched. I've watched so many that they've almost been lost, and they're so long it's really hard for me to find them, and I wanted to show you them. But we're going to read Chris's because they're nice, consolidated, almost like a 10 Commandments of sorts, just on his website. The first three are interesting. One, there's a God. No one's going to look at you stupid if you say there is a God. But someone might look at you stupid if you say God emits a cosmic broadcast of electromagnetic waves that are only able to be received if you're on DMT. But there's this, I've watched a lot of trips reports, and I've read a lot about trips, and the biggest thing that I think you can get this idea from is
it feels like my cosmic sinuses have been opened up and unclogged after a long time of being dormant, and it feels great.
Clogs you didn't know you had, on levels you didn't know you had.
Whoa. And as I'm being there with my cosmic glands all open.
But that's where number 3 probably came from. Like, a lot of these points that I read as I research DMT are just points that you experience while being on DMT in some way, shape, or form. Aliens are now present on Earth and hyperactive in an effort to save the Earth from environmental disaster. The aliens have recognized Chris Cantelmo, or Leo Gura, as the only human well-versed enough to speak to the hearts and minds of every type of human. Aliens have demanded Chris to deliver the aliens' message: stop polluting and warmongering and overpopulating, or we will unleash an unstoppable plague and lethal worldwide epidemic. Which a lot of people that take DMT say they can see the future, and that there's aliens in there that literally speak to you telepathically and would say things like that. They say some completely profound things that leave you to interpret. I remember one, he was like, the guy, he said,
"Hi, I'm Justin, and this is my DMT trip report." And it's like vibrating and shaking, and it's kind of difficult for him to hold. But he calls out to the other entities. He says, "I can do this, and he can take it. I can do it, and he can take it." Like he's saying, like, don't worry. And at the end of the ride, these entities start cheering me on, and they want me to wriggle out of my old body. Of the god or gods who made this universe. And then they tell me, our universe was created for consciousness to become aware of itself.
How do you interpret that? And it's just like so many unknowns. It does some crazy things to you. And as you read how Chris and Leo behave in the real world, it's almost like they've completely detached themselves from reality as we know it. Leo, you were a mechanical engineer for 1.5 years, so there's no way that you are actually smarter than Einstein. And Chris Cantelmo, you were a medical professional. You had a PhD, not in physics. So I don't know why you think that you could be qualified to overwrite Einstein's equation. And then, like, where did the thought come for you to think that you're right? Like, yeah, maybe one of these telepathic beings spoke it into your ear. But with what proof? You know, like, how do you just accept that as being fact without doing additional research yourself? And you scroll down, one of the ones that I think is very interesting, besides free will is an illusion, the consequence of fact is anxiety. If I can find it. The mental health syndromes called schizophrenia and autism are one and the same. That's bold. And result from relative overabundance of bioavailable DMT. Okay, DMT does exist in humans. It is created in your brain already. It's already there, but your body breaks it down just as quickly as it's created. From here on, these syndromes can be unified as autophrenia. And if you Google that word, an autophrenic, it doesn't exist anywhere but in Chris Cantelmo. Like, it'll instantly be assigned to Cantelmoism, and there might be 6 Google searches that pop up. It just baffles me. So he goes there and they say that a lot of prominent people in history were allophrenic. So you got Shakespeare, Galileo, Da Vinci, and probably Jesus. But then he goes on to say, and Moses was either an allophrenic or inhaled DMT released by the burning bush. So you can just see the things that DMT communicates to you from that other dimension. And without fact checking, without trying to add another layer to it, without trying to interpret what you saw, if you take it just word for word what your experience was, I can loosely see how you get to this point. Let me go back and say trigger warning for self-harm. So keep that in mind as I speak. I'll give you 3 seconds to click away. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm going to assume you're okay with me continuing. But one of his beliefs is that people that commit suicide are better off after death than everyone else. So he, unfortunately, in doing my research for this episode or video, I found out that he committed suicide in November of 2019. So fairly recent. And because of the fact that his cult following is largely based on Reddit, and when Reddit deleted that, he didn't really have a way of getting in contact with a lot of his followers, and he didn't do a great job at brainwashing them, which is not like a thing I should be celebrating someone for, but he didn't do a great job at brainwashing his following, so they didn't really transfer over. He only had like 600 subscribers on YouTube, so when he committed suicide, thankfully he was able to influence no one to also do the same thing. In the case of Leo, and I'm not sure if he has the same belief, and he has done an excellent job at getting these people who are vulnerable, who are down low in their life, and are very easily manipulated, and are listening to everything he says blindly at this point, which is almost the definition of a cult. But if he ever decided to broadcast the fact that he was going to kill himself and broadcast to his masses as to why and the benefits of that situation, people would listen. And that's kind of scary. Yeah, keep an eye on it, but you can't really do anything until it's too late. There's nothing on paper that's like, this is a cult. There's nothing on, he hasn't set up a hierarchy. Unless he is smuggling people to his house, there's no evidence of it on the internet. There's no like living arrangements. There's no in-person meetings. There's no any of that. So, you can really just wait and see what happens. So that's more or less, I usually don't end the videos facing this way, but I don't have anything else to add. So this has been Walks, and I'll see you guys when I see you guys. Peace out.